We are going to be making a bird condo that's based on a fairly common design, but with a few extras added to it. For this project, I'm going to be using a miter saw, but a circular saw or any kind of hand saw should be sufficient as well. We'll also need a drill gun, some clamps, a pencil, and a measuring tape. A square and a power sander would be useful, but these are not required. For supplies, we'll need 2 pieces of fencing boards, a 2x2, some 1.5-inch screws, 2 corner braces, some wood glue, and some masking tape. I will be using a dowel and some trim here, but these are purely decorative and are not required. Here's the board that we're going to be working with. We'll need to make 2 45-degree cuts at the top of our board. I'm using a handsaw here just to show these angled cuts are easily done by hand as well. The miter saw I will be using for the rest of the cuts is really more about convenience. We're making the center tower piece first. We want to make a mark at 14 inches from the top using your measuring tape and a squaring tool. If you don't have one, any 90-degree edge on a ruler, a book, a scrap piece of wood will do as well. And now we just make a straight cut using the miter saw. We've got one side done. Now we need to make the same exact piece for the back. Place the finished piece against your board. Make sure the edges are properly lined up. And trace with a pencil over the edges. Now for the miter cut, we will need to adjust the fence to a 45-degree angle. Line up and cut. Repeat for the other side. Next, we're going to make the side walls of the center tower, so 2 identical pieces. These will be shorter than the front and back pieces because the roof is going to be lower on the sides. Make the mark at 9 inches. If we attach the side walls like this, our tower will be deeper than it is wide, and we're going for a perfect square, so I'll need to trim the width here to 4 inches. We'll start to glue up now. For this step you can use nails instead of glue if you prefer. It's quite common for birdhouses and nails are definitely the faster and easier option. The drawback with nails though is that they're going to be visible on the surface, so if you don't want that you could just use wood glue. Once it's all lined up, we want to apply pressure on it and let it dry. Clamps are the right tool here, but this 3-sided structure was an awkward setup for that, so instead just putting something heavy on the top is probably the easier solution. While that's drying, let's get started on the front and back pieces for the 2 houses on the sides. So in total, that would be 4 identical pieces that we'll need. Make the mark at 7 inches. Since we're doing multiple cuts at the same length, clamping some scrap wood as a stop block 7 inches from the blade means we won't have to measure each time before making the rest of the cuts. We've got the pieces cut to the right length. Now we just need to cut the slanted rooftops. I've gone with 30 degrees as the angle on the side roofs. Four identical cuts needed here, so I'm using a stop block again. A lot of the fencing lumber tends to be warped, as you can notice here, so try to pick boards that are as straight as possible and you won't have this problem. But if, like me, there's no turning back for you, we just want to make sure that the board pieces are firmly held in place with clamps or with push sticks or scrap wood. We don't want our fingers so close to the blade with an unstable workpiece under it. Next, we'll make the roof pieces for the side houses, so we'll need two identical pieces at 8 inches each. For the roof pieces, we also need to make a couple of bevel cuts at 30 degrees on the ends so that it sits flush against the center tower. We just need the outer wall now to close it off. This piece will be 4 inches in length. The last step on our main structure is going to be the roof of the center tower. These will be two 5.5 inch long pieces with a 45-degree bevel cut at each end. Adjust the bevel gauge to 45 degrees. Quick cleanup. And glue it up. I don't have right angle clamps, so just regular masking tape will have to do the trick here. We're going to start gluing up the rest of the pieces too now. After leaving it overnight to dry, it should start looking like our intended plans. We now need to drill the holes and add the roofed patio. This will basically be the bird feeder section. The patio roof is made the same way as the center tower roof, using two 3.5 inch long pieces. The main difference with this roof is that it has a 30-degree bevel cut instead of the 45. I went with 30 degrees to keep it consistent with the angles on the side roofs. We're not quite ready to glue up the fourth wall yet. We have one more piece we need to add to the inside of the center tower. This piece will separate the two condos at the top and bottom floors. We'll need it at 4 inches in width. And glue it up. More glue up. For these side houses, the warped lumber made things pretty bad. We're off by an entire ½ inch as a result, and this gap is not something I can cover with wood filler or sanding, so I decided to try forcing it in place with some metal braces. Worked pretty good for the first one. We can see that it lined up where we wanted it. Not so fortunate with the second side though. Luckily for me, it was just a glue that gave in, so the pieces are still fully intact and a quick redo on the glue up and we're good to go. I don't really know why I left the metal braces in there, as they really serve no purpose at this point. Everything looks nicely lined up now. Some sanding to get rid of the excess glue. For the birdhouse entrances, I've marked where to drill. No real measurement or math here, just mark them where I think it'll look nice. And now for a thorough sanding inside and out. I started with 60 grit and finished it off with 320. A rope or a string works pretty well for odd angles like this. Almost there, now we'll attach the patio roof and legs. I got impatient and used my kid's hot glue gun here to attach these final pieces. This was of course a bad choice because it didn't survive the first rainfall and I had to redo all of these steps later. So don't follow what you're seeing on screen here, use the proper wood glue or small nails for this step. This is an optional step, it's just some trim I thought looked nice. Cutting this by hand as it feels too soft and flimsy to go under the miter saw. Again, don't use hot glue. Our bird condo is basically done. We just need a base for it now. Using the second fencing board we got, cut 4 pieces at 16.5 inches each. And then with our 2x2, we want to cut 2 pieces at 21 inches each. The platform needs to be strong enough to balance and hold the full weight of our structure, so we'll attach it using 1.5 inch screws in each plank. And this is why you never want to buy the cheapest drill gun available. If you're spending any money on tools, a good drill should be high on that list. I didn't really like the look of the decorative trim for the front legs, so I replaced it with 1/2 inch dowels and glued the leftover trim along the roof. And with the leftover dowels, I made a perch for each birdhouse. I'm going to add some stain for color now, but this is also an optional step. You could leave the birdhouse the way it is if it matches your backyard fence and you're basically done at this stage. If you just wanted this as a decorative item in your backyard and don't really want birds nesting in it, you could go with brighter and more colorful options here. But if you're aiming for the birds to actually live in it, chances are you'll get more interest from them if the colors blend in with the environment around it. For the post, I just used the remaining 2x2 and cut a sharp angle at one end. It's just easier to hammer it into the soil or grass this way without having to dig. After attaching the platform with screws from the top, we want to use braces to attach the birdhouse so that it's easier to open up and clean up next season. And that's a wrap.